All right, so it appears we have a trade on our hands here as we're still kind of in the dead days of free agency, but nonetheless, a nice little trade came through today for us to talk about, so I'm just going to give my first blush reaction to it. It was either reported by Adrian Wojnarowski or Shams Charania. Sorry, the timeline on Twitter just blends together, especially when you wake up in the morning, but we do have a 3-team trade between the Chicago Bulls and the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Portland Trail Blazers, and it's kind of an interesting one on multiple fronts for obvious reasons, and there are initial first reactions I have to it, not winners and losers, but this is kind of interesting, and it'll probably change as, we get into the season and we get more games in and we see what the players look like. But let's go over the framework of the trade that just happened. So the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Chicago Bulls and the Portland Trail Blazers did a 3-team trade where the Cavs end up getting Lauri Markkanen from the Chicago Bulls in a this is a sign-in trade deal, by the way, because Lauri Markkanen is currently a restricted free agent, or was a restricted free agent, I should say. Now, that's not the case anymore. The Cavs agreed to a 4-year, $64 million deal with Lauri Markkanen, and that obviously is a big component of the sign-in trade. And so in return, the Bulls got Derrick Jones Jr. They got the Blazers' first-round pick that is protected 1 through 14 through 2028. So it looks like the Blazers are covering their asses just in case Dame at some point requests out. And then the Blazers get Larry Nance Jr. And, I'll start with the Cavs first because I think that is the more interesting team to hit in this trade for multiple reasons. I think that, one, I'm still a believer in Lauri Markkanen. I think he has shown offensive flashes, especially in his second year. I know these last, couple of years he hasn't really been good and also has had trouble staying on the court and being healthy, but I still see the offensive flashes from his second year, and I'm just like, man, this guy can be a player if he could just, get out of the doldrums of Jim Boylan, and obviously he had Billy Donovan last year as a head coach in Chicago. But at that point, it just seemed like the Bulls were just going in a different direction, one with Zach LaVine, and then, Patrick Williams obviously showed a lot more flashes earlier than people expected, even though he was drafted number 4 overall. And then the Bulls ended up trading for Nikola Vucevic. So you could kind of see the writing on the wall for Lauri Markkanen. It didn't seem like he was going to come back to Chicago. But I just see something in there still. If he could just play with a bit more... If he could just play with guards that have a bit more dynamic ability to their game, like Darius Garland and Colin Sexton, then I could see a world in which Lauri shows the offensive skill set that we've all seen him be capable of before. Also, granted, of course, he can stay healthy. But the problem with the Cavaliers is they just committed $100 million to Jarrett Allen, who they traded for last season, and they had to commit to him because, one, he's a good player, but, you moved assets to get him. Then you drafted Evan Mobley, which was the right pick, and I think has as good of a chance to become the best player in this draft. But then also the elephant in the room is Kevin Love is under contract also still with the Cavaliers. So you've committed well over $100 million per year tied up into your bigs. So I'm not sure that was the best use of resources. Lance, I'm still thinking of Trey Lance because I'm a 49er fan. We have a franchise quarterback. But anyway, Larry Nance Jr. was, when healthy, I thought was the Cavs' most important player. I think he is a versatile defender. He has turned into a really good passer when he got to Cleveland. The problem is Nance couldn't stay healthy, but I thought, being that he was the Cavs' best trade asset, I thought the Cavs would have been better off getting some wings to kind of flank Garland and Sexton, because if you just follow the model of what's going on in Portland, I don't think a small backcourt is really the pathway to being a perennial contender if you're doing the whole team building process thing. But look, Lauri Markkanen is a high upside play, obviously. You get to see how he pans out. And then, if he turns out to be good, but not as good as you expected, he could be a trade chip down the road. I guess same with Jarrett Allen. The interesting thing and the upside you could look at this for the Cavs is that, Allen's contract and Markkanen's contract expire before you have to extend Evan Mobley. And then at that point, you can kind of decide what your core is for the future, because, Isaac Okoro is still on his rookie deal. You might have to extend Darius Garland soon. We're heading into Garland's third year now, and so he will probably be up for an extension next summer. But this is definitely a high upside play for the Cavs. I just don't know if it makes sense right now for the short term, considering Cleveland apparently has not a win now mandate, but we better win and try to make the playoffs mandate. And I just don't see how the logjam in the front court is going to help that. But Lauri Markkanen, for all we've said about, his inconsistencies with injuries and all that stuff, and really his second year being his best year, every year he's been a really good three-point shooter, and I think that will help, grease the wheels on a, rather vanilla offense. JB Bickerstaff, the head coach of the Cavs, really isn't the most creative offensive mind, and so if you're just going to have a vanilla offense, just have a lot of, players that can do some things on the offensive end that can kind of make the vanilla look a little bit more tasty, I guess. Terrible saying an analogy, sorry. I'm an overnight person, so this is still the morning for me technically, but we roll with the punches. The Bulls, I thought this was a great trade for the Bulls, and man, I have a lot of Bulls fans in my life, and they must be feeling a breath of fresh air still now that Garpax isn't heading the helm anymore in the front office, and it's Arturas Karnisovas. He's just been knocking it out of the park this offseason, I think. I want to do a video on the Bulls soon because I actually think they have a good shot at making the playoffs, but they get Derrick Jones Jr., who's in terms of a player, but theoretically he can help defensively on the wing, and I think with the signings, the Bulls could definitely use some more defensive help, considering that 2 out of their 5 projected starters are really the only good defenders in the lineup, and they probably need more help on that front. Not that Derrick Jones Jr. is going to start, I just think you need more perimeter help, as much perimeter help on the defensive end as possible. But they get the Blazers' first-round pick, obviously protected 1 through 14 through 2028. But, you get to refill the coffers a little bit with your draft picks, and if the Bulls do make the playoffs, then the Bulls have an extra pick to mess around with. And then, of course, they get the 2023 second-round pick from the Cavaliers via the Denver Nuggets, so a little bit of synergy there, considering that Arturas used to work for the Denver Nuggets as the general manager. But on the Blazers side of this, I made a video of this about a couple of weeks ago listing my losers of free agency, and the Blazers were one of my teams that I listed because, I just didn't know what they were doing. I thought that the moves they made were really just marginal moves on the bench, getting Ben McLemore, Cody Zeller, and Tony Snell. So I thought the Blazers had a terrible offseason, but getting Larry Nance Jr., granted, of course, Nance stays healthy, the Blazers got a really good player here. To those of you watching this video, I don't know how many Cavs games you were able to watch this year, and I don't blame you if you didn't watch many Cavs games, because aside from the early part of the season, they weren't really good. But Larry Nance Jr. is a really good defender, a versatile defender, can defend multiple positions, is really versatile as a 4-5 man, is a really good passer, started developing a little bit of a corner 3, not something that you want Nance. Not something you want to rely on Nance for all the time, but Nance was starting to fill out his offensive game, and it ended up becoming a really good player for the Cavaliers. And for the Blazers, a team that needs all the defensive help they can get, which makes sense if you link Ben Simmons to them or somebody like that. Getting Nance will not only help bolster the Blazers' defense, it gives the Blazers another playmaker that they can run stuff through. I know they like to run some elbow stuff and top of the key dribble handoffs with Nurkic. Nance is also a perfect player to run those type of plays to get, CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard off the ball and getting shots that way. And also just somebody who is a solid communicator on that end of the floor and is also just really talented on the defensive end of the floor, and somebody who can help bolster the Blazers defense. So I actually really, really like this move. I probably like this move the most out of the 3 teams in this trade. If I had to rank it, I'd probably go Blazers, Bulls, and as much as I love Lauri Markkanen and I want to see him in a fresh start, I would probably have to go Cleveland last. I am a little bit higher on the Lauri Markkanen side of this for the Cavs than a lot of people are, and I get why people will be hesitant to say that this was a good move for the Cavs, and I'm not even calling this a good move for the Cavs. I just see it as a high upside play. And look, if Lauri Markkanen pops, then all the concerns about possible flaws and all that we have with the Cavs initially when we first look at this trade, and remember, this is a trade that has happened today in August. Who knows what it will look like during the season? I just think that those concerns will just fall by the wayside if Markkanen pops. But interesting 3-team trade to say the least. These are 3 teams that are obviously trying to, aim for higher expectations and higher success than what they had last year. But overall, we'll see how this trade plays out. But it's interesting nonetheless.